Let's go back to Joanna Gosling. She's on College Green. Joanna.
Whoopee to that, yes, thank you, Andrew. Well, with me now, Tim Farron, the Lib Dem MP, and Mark Reckless for UKIP. How do you square what you've heard today? Because we heard from the Chancellor talking about the underlying strength and resilience of the UK economy. He's also been talking about eye-watering levels of debt, and the figure that's being put on that is an extra £122 billion of cumulative additional borrowing. How would you assess, therefore, the state of the nation's finances and what you've heard?
Well, I think we've just seen the epitaph on the fact that over the last 5 months, all of the good work we did on financial stability in the coalition has been undone. The Chancellor will say he had no alternative, but the figure actually, in terms of the gap, the OBR's figure, is 220 billion. We found out what Brexit means. Brexit means increase in unemployment, as the OBR suggests. It means lower growth, it means lower living standards, and it means spiralling debt. And if we believe that this is a disaster that Britain should avoid, particularly the hard Brexit that absolutely nobody voted for, then Britain certainly deserves better than the white flag that the Labour Party waved in front of Philip Hammond this afternoon.
Mark Reckless, the price of Brexit?
Well, I'd say it's the epitaph for the 3 million jobs lie. People like Tim Farron were telling us we left the EU, 3 million jobs could be at risk, and we see the forecast officially for unemployment in 2020 after we've left the EU is just 860,000.
But what about those debt figures? £122 billion of additional borrowing, GDP not doing as well as had been anticipated, and overall the level of debt just not going down as had been forecast.
The growth forecast is reasonably good, but the government is borrowing too much. They sort of talk a tough game on austerity, but their words are not matched with deeds.
So what would you say that?
Well, what we'd like to say is we'd accelerate leaving the European Union. Every month we're in, it's another £1 billion we're paying. I'm pleased to see the official forecast has a cliff edge fall in our contributions. No more contributions to the EU after December 2018, according to this statement. We'd also like to make savings on overseas aid to focus on the humanitarian disaster relief, but save 10 billion a year. We'd scrap HS2. We'd look again at the green subsidies, and we need to get the public finances in order.
So what we've discovered in terms of the black hole within the Chancellor's budget, so £220 billion over this term, over this Parliament, that massively reduces the income tax take, the tax take across the board. And what it means, because we have at the same time, since the 23rd of June, it almost seems that every single day has been a good day to very bad news. And the worst possible news has been within our National Health and Social Care Service. There wasn't a penny extra given towards the NHS today, when it could and should have been. And the problem is that whilst we head towards a hard Brexit that absolutely nobody voted for, an exit from the single market that was not on the ballot paper, then what you're seeing is less income into the exchequer. It means less money into our health service and less money into our schools. That can be fixed.
The savings that Mark Reckless talks about as a result of getting out of the EU?
Well, the one thing that, I'm in many ways I admire Mark for carrying on repeating what was on the side of that bus, £350 million a week. Well,
377 million. It's been revised up according to these figures.
It's a delight to hear someone standing by it. You are the only person on the planet who still believes that. And the reality is, in this post-truth world, we've had some truth today. We've seen that the gap between what we could have had and what we will have is £250 billion over this Parliament. Can you imagine the number of nurses, doctors, social workers, teachers, police officers and soldiers we could be paying for if this government hadn't headed for a hard Brexit that nobody voted for?
Of what would happen to the economy in the immediate aftermath have not happened, have they?
Not the predictions I made.
But talking about a dramatic increase in unemployment, it's going the other way.
So we've seen, again, £220 billion hole in the public finances, and we see what that will lead to. My job, the worst thing in the world is to be a person in opposition wanting things to go badly to prove your case. I don't want that. I want Britain to be strong. That's why I actually think that Philip Hammond's announcements on infrastructure, limited and too late though many of them are actually encouraging. At a time of low interest rates, of course, we should be spending and doing the things we've been telling them to do for the last 18 months. The problem is that because of making a choice of hard Brexit that nobody voted for, Philip Hammond has put himself in a position where that good work that he may be doing on infrastructure investment will be swamped and dwarfed by the black hole that he's created.
It feels, Mark Reckless, like we are in a period of complete uncertainty and unpredictability in terms of these are all predictions that we're hearing today, obviously, and predictions aren't always right. We don't really know what the impact will be once Britain leaves the EU?
Official predictions certainly are not always right. We had the Treasury just 6 months ago telling us if we voted to leave, unemployment would already be up to 1.2 million, 1.3 million next year. Now we hear from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility that it will be just 760,000. We do, I think, get a bit more certainty, at least in terms of an official forecast of what's going to happen with leaving the EU. Contributions to the EU budget stop in December 2018, and there are no tariffs going forward with the European Union. So I think that's good news in terms of official position, and I think business can plan on the basis there won't be tariffs with the EU. We'll have savings coming online, and actually the outlook is pretty good.
I mean, first of all, a wonderful piece of spin. Can I tell you that the reality, the one figure that I think we can't ignore, that both of us probably agree on because it's there and obvious, is that there are 500 million consumers in the European Union, in the single market, the largest, most prosperous market on planet Earth, and a major reason for that enormous black hole that is going to affect every public service and every family in this country is because at the moment Britain is heading outside of that single market. To talk about access to the single market is nonsense. North Korea has got access to the single market. Membership of the single market will be the difference between this country growing and prospering and us floundering, and we mustn't do the latter.
What we want is tariff-free access to the single market, is I think probably what we would agree is desirable.
Why would that happen without freedom of movement?
Exactly.
Well, I'm just saying that according to the official forecasts, it will, and they're not expecting us to be bringing in all this revenue from tariffs, which will be far, far more for us if we applied tariffs to the European Union than it would be for them, and it's not in their interest to apply tariffs. I don't think that's going to happen. There will be restrictions on freedom of movement and no more contributions to the budget.
What we've heard today, and obviously the fact that the borrowing figures are where they are, have the last years of austerity been a complete waste of time, because people out there will think, I have been hit so hard in the pocket and the nation's finances are still in this state.
I mean, the reality is that for 5 years, the Liberal Democrats, not making ourselves massively popular in the process, fought to make sure that there was fairness whilst we put the lid on excessive spending to get the finances in order. And the last 5 months have completely undone that. The Tories' reputation for fiscal responsibility is completely out the window as a consequence. So yes, that is depressing, but it's more depressing for the people around the country who will suffer the consequences of that. And yes, austerity has been felt. It's nothing compared to what may come if we don't maintain membership of the single market, softening Brexit if at all possible, and best of all, when we see the deal we're going to get, give the British people a say on that, those final terms.
The Chancellor says that he can afford to do what he's doing because of the reputation that has been built up with austerity and the management of the economy. He's putting out these new fiscal rules. What do you think of those?
Well, we've been asking for him to do that some time, and those are the things we encouraged when we were in government.
People believe fiscal rules anymore?
Well, probably not. The problem is that the good stuff that is in this autumn statement, and there is some, which is essentially the investment in our infrastructure, it's far too small. It's dwarfed by what is actually needed, but it's also massively dwarfed by the enormous black hole and the damage done by the impending hard Brexit that absolutely nobody voted for.
I agree with Tim that the infrastructure spend is too small, and let's get on with shovel-ready projects, sort of local roads, things that can be done. We'd like to improve the Manchester-Liverpool line. We'd like to scrap the tolls on the crossings of the Severn, the Humber, the Mersey Tunnel and the Dartford crossing, and I think we can pay for that by cutting HS2, which is a huge bondoodle far in the future, reduce overseas aid, make some savings and push ahead with a positive economic future.
Thank you very much, Mark Reckless. Tim Farron, thank you very much. Back to you, Andrew.